DeSanto Propane is 4 generations strong as a trustworthy, family-owned business with unmatched customer service. Go online at DeSantoPropane.com for more info or call toll-free at 1-800-752-4574 today. Since 1937, the difference has been DeSanto Propane.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to Against the Boards. I'm Chamberlain Bauder. Thanks to my producer, Paul Russo, for getting us up and rolling to you. A lot of lax, of course, always going on in the upstate New York area. That is what we're focused on today. Quickly, before we get to that, saw on my phone on my way up here today, Devin Levi, 2-year extension for what would have been a restricted free agent. Hopefully, he's back in Rochester next year. I mean, I won't lie. I only really want to talk about Sabres if they're going to come down to Rochester at this point. Because, yeah, I think I'm a Utah Mammoth fan now. I don't really know. I'm just following JJ Peterka, and some Buffalo fans might be upset about that because he requested to leave. But I can't really blame him for that. In the lacrosse world, though, of news, first things first, friend of the program, Thomas Gravino, we had him on 2 weeks ago, just got announced on the official under-20s USA lacrosse team for the U20 national tournament coming up this weekend. Shout out from Maryland, posted on their social medias there, and he'll be headed over to South Korea to play for that week-long tournament as one of their short-stick defensive midfielders. Of course, Gravino, the Victor product, just played in the national championship last season and will likely play in a couple more under Coach Tillman before he graduates as a Terp. But in news to go along with that, last summer, Thomas Gravino spent his time playing in the Upstate Collegiate Box Lacrosse League, and unfortunately, with everything going on in the Rochester lacrosse world over this summer, that league did not happen. However, the National Collegiate Box Series is still going on, and it's going on next week. And because of the fact that they weren't able to have a league, Rochester was given the hosting rights to the national tournament. Also, of course, they're defending champions, so they get to keep it. And with that, the Hawkeyes have put together a squad for this 2025 National Collegiate Box Series to defend their title. Now, just a quick glance through this Hawkeyes roster at some quick notable names for everyone. And some names people may not know that I know as I'm looking down this list just now and realizing that I missed one already. So, first things first, of course, the team bringing back their limestone pairing of Nate Senez and Zach Terry, a lefty and righty combo. That Terry up top as a lefty and Senez down low as a righty really mirror each other well, and Senez usually has the same number of assists that Terry has goals in a game. Usually a nice way to live as two teammates do on the offensive end. Also, though, getting added to the Hawkeyes offense from the Armory squad, Clifford Gaston and Alec Constable, two big-time righties. Clifford Gaston, a premier attackman for the RIT Tigers, probably one of the most creative players I've ever seen on a box field, on the floor, carpet, whatever you want to call it. He is going to be an absolute human highlight reel for this Hawkeyes squad, kind of like a righty version of and smaller version of Josh Byrne, I would say, the way that he plays, just with the stick as an extension of his body. But the last player that I really want to bring up here that was a new one that I saw added to the squad this year, Sly Sundown from Akron, the younger brother of Larson Sundown, who currently plays in the NLL. But I watched Sly play as, I want to say, a freshman in high school for Akron in a New York State semifinal game. Dude's gigantic. He's 6'6". He's a lefty. He's going to be able to live on the crease if he wants to, but that's what he does in field. In box with a smaller environment, I think he's just going to lay the lumber, and that is going to be such a big addition to that offense, because that was one thing that the Hawkeyes were not really able to do last year, was bully anybody around. They just had a lot of shooters and good shooters, but they didn't have an enforcer, and Sly can definitely do that for them. So that's going to be awesome to watch. Next week, we're going to be coming to you pre-recorded because I will be actively broadcasting games for this tournament while the podcast would be going on. But in that, we'll really get into the nitty-gritty of some of these teams and the makeup of these squads, where players are from, and where some people might know some familiar names and different things of that nature. So be sure to tune in next week for that. But right now, that is our wrap on the NCBS, which will be next weekend at the campus of RIT. So now, of course, our weekly conversation about the Rochester Nighthawks situation. A tweet came out from the NLL yesterday or the day before. I want to say it came out on Tuesday, actually, announcing that the CBA has not officially been agreed to for the between the league and the NLLPA. They are continuing to negotiate the terms of a new CBA. Given our ongoing efforts, we've mutually decided to delay the beginning of the free agency period until August 15th. We will provide further updates as they become available. Now, why are we talking about this for the Nighthawks? Because free agency being delayed means that if they have not found an owner already, which I'd really hope that if, we're sitting here like 2 weeks away, that they would have found one from that date. But that is a period that they extend to free agency. Free agency is basically our cutoff as Nighthawks fans of, if we get to free agency and we still don't have an owner, that's the line. Like, it's going to move, it's going to disperse, something else is going to occur. So having these extra 2 weeks is big, because it really just means that we get another level of a buffer, per se. Also announced yesterday on Twitter, a tweet that I actually, until I just sat there and read that, forgot that even existed. Channel 13 in Rochester came out and said, sources say they are very optimistic that lacrosse will stay in Rochester. It sounded almost like they were just kind of using the Jamie Dawick announcement that I posted and talked about last week as like a sources say, but it was very clearly not that. It would have come out much sooner if that's what it was. And that was from, I believe, the sports director at Channel 13 in Rochester. So definitely big to see more of those types of pieces of information, and good to see the perspective hope that things are going to stick around in Rochester. All right, now we shift from the carpet to the turf and the field to the outdoor game, where the PLL only has 2 weeks left in their regular season, a weekend in Denver, and then next weekend they'll be off in Boston to wrap up the regular season. And, things have kind of rolled out as we've gone on here in the PLL. Let's take a look at the league standings and the conference standings as well. League standings overall, only two teams have clinched so far with their 6 wins, the New York Atlas and the Denver Outlaws. And of course, they'll get to play against one another this week to figure out who really gets that goal differential break and a tiebreaker break in the first versus second seed. Of course, when it comes to the conference standings, Denver and New York each the top of their respective conferences, so they'll be able to avoid each other for a while there. But as we break it down the rest of the board, it's kind of still that same thing that I had talked about before, and just this lack of parity, or this too much parity, is concerning. You look at the bottom 4 teams in the league, 2 of those teams are going to make the playoffs and 2 of them aren't, and they all have the same number of wins right now. So it's just going to be interesting to see how that will shake out as time goes on. But what I think is also really interesting about that is that the 2 teams that coming into this season, most people would probably have argued are the best teams in the league, sitting at the bottom of the league standings right now in Boston and in Utah definitely sucks for me. I mean, those are usually the two teams that I'm like the biggest fan of, and backing up as time goes on. And right now, sitting at the bottom of the league, they're expressing the other parts of my fandom. And I probably just sound like a complete bandwagon, but like I've said so many times on this show, when it comes to the PLL, I'm a fan of players. I'm not a fan of teams. And with that, we'll get into what this next weekend in Denver is going to look like. As it shakes out on Friday, it's going to be Carolina and Denver first at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So that game will be at 6 p.m. Mountain time, I believe. Math is not my strongest suit, but we'll stick with it. And then at 8:30 is the Boston Cannons and the Philly Water Dogs. 8:30 Mountain Time. That's when they're playing. The reason I'm talking about playing times is because of what Saturday is going to be, and we'll get into that in a second. But when you're watching 8 p.m. and 10:30, that 10:30 game I think is going to be awesome, Philly and Boston, just because they're both at points in the season where whoever loses might really be on that downward trend of not making it into the playoffs. Because they're those two teams at the bottom of the East that are going to be fighting for it. I think Maryland is a little bit more comfortable than we think, to be honest. But that game is at 10:30 Eastern, 8:30 Mountain. Saturday, though, this is where things get interesting to me. The 1 o'clock game on Saturday is going to be an absolute doozy. No doubt about it. It's the two top teams in the league, the only 6-2 teams that exist. The Denver Outlaws taking on the New York Atlas at 1 p.m. Now, I feel like I have a lot of things that I want to get into with this right now. Because first things first, everyone knows that is the New York Bull. And I will die on that hill because that's the Rochester Rattlers playing against the New York Atlas. And this gets me into my first soapbox of the day here today. Why on earth, when you made a PLL league with 6 teams and you only based one of those 6 teams around a MLL squad, the Rochester Rattlers becoming the PLL Chrome, the Dallas Rattlers technically becoming the PLL Chrome, why would you take the only team, once you were at 8 and ready to move into locations, the only team that actually had an organization behind them that you could use for throwbacks, you could use for anything, and give them a different MLL team as their name? It's just stupid. There's no other way around it. It is idiotic. You could have moved the Chaos. You could have, literally anybody other than the one team that still had an MLL coach with their MLL captains on the team. That was not the squad to do it with at all. Just stupid. Just straight up dumb. Off my soapbox now. Also dumb is playing a game at 6 p.m. on Friday night and then being asked to play a game at 11 a.m. the following day in Denver at altitude. Like, what are we doing? If the Denver Outlaws aren't sluggish on Saturday at 1 o'clock, then I will be absolutely baffled. And second, that game is on ABC. Like, that's their primetime only syndicated game of the week. And you've got a team playing their second game in, less than 20 hours at elevation. That was simply not thought through. Like, you can't tell me that it was. And if you're like making compromises, that's not the compromise you make. Although, based on the fact that we've already seen players playing in 110-degree heat on black turf, I guess it's not really a problem. But that is baffling. Like, why? how many changes are we going to have to see in the Denver squad between Friday and Saturday for them to be able to play? And did elevation even come into their mind at all? The fact that they're playing in Denver. We know that they're not going to have a lot of time to adjust to the altitude. It's not like everybody that's playing for Denver went out there the second they got done in Utah and they've been adjusting to the altitude all week. That's not how the PLL works. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that one shakes out, to be completely honest. I'm worried about some seriously sloppy play on ABC at a point when you think you should be getting the two best teams in the league. I think that yes, let's be very clear. Brendan O'Neill, Pat Cavanaugh, Jared Bernhardt, Logan Wisnauskas, all Logan McNady in goal. They're all amazing. That team is disgusting. They are on paper the best team in the PLL. I don't think I'm taking any team on less than a 24-hour back-to-back at elevation against the best team in the other conference. Just not happening. So there's that. And then it'll be Maryland and California playing at 8 p.m. late that night, or later that night, for our Saturday night lacrosse between two teams sitting in that 3-win category trying to fight for that 4th win. Some fun points quickly as I like to dive into fantasy just every once in a while. Last week was fun just because I keep forgetting to start my fantasy lineup until the first game has already been played, and it makes it real interesting. But let's just see if there's any good shouts for our upstate New York players as we take a quick peek through the attackmen. First things first. Doesn't look like we really have any picks. Of course, this being a no Utah week means no Connor Fields for anybody wanting to pick for their upstate New Yorkers. Thomas McConvey, a 20-token pickup in fantasy this week. Another good shout, Jake Stevens. There's your pick for this week. If I can only make one PLL fantasy pick, it's going to be this one right here. Take Jake Stevens for 9 tokens. The Atlas against the Denver Outlaws at 1 p.m. He's bound to have more than 9 tokens worth of point output. Absolutely bound to have it. I'd also probably argue that Liam Entenmann is probably a pretty good shout as a pick, even though he's a big-time token pick. Also, before we wrap up here, last kind of thing, I really do think that this could be a year where the MVP goes to a goalie. And I love that it's between the goalie for New York in Liam Entenmann and the goalie from New York in Logan McNaney. Definitely the top 2 goalies right now when it comes to the way they've propelled their teams. And at the end of the day, they both now through their short careers are easily, statistically, technically the best goalies ever. Now, given Logan McNaney's played, 6 games now, and Liam Entenmann has played 13. In 11 of Liam Entenmann's 13 games, he's been over 50%. Logan McNaney has yet to have a game under 50% in his career. Just outrageous goalie play from those two. And at the end of the day, anybody saying that Michael Sowers should be winning the MVP when his team might not even make the playoffs is joking with themselves. And that's the other thing too that's just funny, right? They're second in their conference right now at 4-4, the Water Dogs, but score differential, they're third in the conference. And then at the end of the day, the second Boston wins one game, they're back to a head-to-head tiebreaker of score differential. So like there's so little differentiating any of the teams unless someone can elevate themselves out of the group the way that both Denver and the Atlas have. So yeah, 2 weeks to figure out that bottom end of things. And I really do think that the number one overall pick or the playoffs is going to come down to goal differential. But that's going to do it for us this week on Against the Boards. Another short episode as things kind of are a little bit more hectic for some reason in this beginning of August period for myself. But we'll see how things shake out for upstate New York in the lax world this weekend. And until next time, thanks to my producer, Paul Russo, I've been Chamberlain Bauder. You're listening to Against the Boards.